We're on the record. Council agenda, Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, Township Council agenda meeting of April 2nd, 2019.
Posting a notice. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building on December 19th, 2018, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record and the North Star Ledger on December 27, 2018, and was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers and local radio stations on December 19, 2018. Council meetings are videoed and aired on Cablevision Public Access Channel 21 at 11 a.m. on Sundays and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Please rise for flag salute. Piero, if you would.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. DePiero?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Carriffy?
Here.
Also in attendance are Mayor Michael Soriano, Business Administrator Keith Kasmark, CFO Ann Cucci, Township Attorney Jim Lott, and Township Clerk Colette Madden. Council President, we have a quorum. You may begin.
Thank you. Upcoming meetings, April 16th, 2019, 7 p.m., regular meeting. May 7th, 2019, 7 p.m., agenda meeting. Approval of minutes, agenda meeting March 5th, 2019. Presentations, reports. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. First off, I'd like to apologize and explain to the condition of the dais right now. We have some very talented employees here in the township, and some of them are very good carpenters. And so what was added to the queue last year was refinishing this dais and getting it done in a timely fashion. We're not pushing it. It's when they have free time. They're jumping on it bit by bit. So we're hoping sometime in the next month it should be completed, and at least it'll make the room look a little brighter, a little nicer. It was getting very scratched and dented up and dated, so it'll look even better. At this point, I would like to call up and join me up front the members of the Women's Club of Parsippany. Please come on up. Yeah, all right. Come on this way. Okay. So this month's very interesting. We have outside, we were just wearing green ribbons and wearing green ties for Donate Life for organ donors. This is also Autism Awareness Day. But we're going to talk about something different right now. There's a lot that goes on in April, and this is something the Township of Parsippany and the Parsippany Women's Club has taken on. Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Proclamation. Whereas we all have a responsibility as individuals, neighbors, community members, and citizens of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills to help create healthy, nurturing, and safe experiences for children. And whereas healthy and safe childhoods help produce confident and successful adults. And whereas child abuse and neglect often occur when people find themselves in stressful situations without community resources and don't know how to cope. And whereas incidences of child abuse and neglect can be reduced by making sure all families have the support they need and deserve to raise their children in a healthy environment. And whereas court-appointed special advocates, CASA, C-A-S-A, is authorized by state statute and federal law to help the court and child welfare system make best interest decisions on behalf of children removed from homes because of abuse or neglect. And whereas CASA, CASA volunteer advocates in the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills help to ensure that abused and neglected children who are placed in foster care and other out-of-home placements are safe and receive the services they need to achieve well-being. And whereas CASA advocates reduce the number of moves between placements, help shorten the overall time a child remains in placement, and serve as a consistent person in the child's life until the child achieves permanency in a safe home with a loving family. Now, therefore, I, Michael A. Soriano, Mayor of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, and April 5th as CASA Child Advocacy Day 2019, and urge all citizens to support the CASA network across New Jersey as it strengthens families and helps children learn, grow, and thrive. Hold on. Frank takes that in the pictures.
Frank's gonna go first, and then I'm gonna jump in. All right, look here for me, ladies.
He doesn't think I'm a joke.
Yeah, he's totally John. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Is there anything you want to say? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Please.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Council President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Township Council, council members,
Council President, I have a couple of things, if I may.
go ahead.
One of the committees I serve as liaison to is Harassment Forms. And they would like everyone to know that there's a short-form documentary about the New Jersey Historic Trust. The documentary was shot at Harassment Forms. And there will be a viewing Saturday, May 4th, 1:30 to 3:30. And they request an RSVP. I guess they have to know how many are going to show up. And I see Vonda in the back. Maybe she can expand on that if she wants. The showing is at the Harassment Forms, right? Thank you. The other thing I have is I got a complaint that there is an American flag on township property. It's a big flag on Route 10 West near the Powder Mill intersection, and it's tattered. I guess the winter wreaked its havoc on it. Maybe the administration could take a look.
Michael, with things with American flags, don't wait for a council meeting. I need to know that as soon as possible.
I found out tonight.
Okay, good. We'll take care of it.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
None of this stuff.
Okay, Township Attorney, Mr. Lott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have several things for closed session tonight, and I will also note that we received a petition for annexation in connection with the Stanberry project. There's a resolution to refer the petition to Planning Board on tonight, and I'll be giving some legal advice to council in closed session.
Okay, thank you. Business Administrator, Mr. Caswell.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight we have a presentation from our municipal planner, Susan Favate, regarding the overview of the proposed zoning ordinances. Some of these zoning ordinances have been out there for some time. In meeting with Susan, she did a thorough review when she took over as the municipal planner. She has revised them and brought them up to form, and tonight she is here to present to us those zoning ordinances that are being proposed, and she will answer any questions that the council may have. Also here is our zoning officer, Jennifer Veely. So if the council has any questions for Jen, she'll be glad to answer them as well.
Great. Good evening, everybody. So as Keith just mentioned, when I arrived about a year ago, just over a year ago, there was a set of zoning changes that had been knocking around for a couple years at least. Ordinances had been prepared at some point, and then they lay dormant for a while. So one of the things that we looked at pretty early on was, are those viable? Do they make sense? Do we want to think about those again? And we actually brought them to the planning board almost a year ago, right about a year ago, and the planning board concurred that they were still valid. They were consistent with the master plan. All of them actually arose directly from the 2014 master plan reexamination. So we've worked with Keith and with Riker Danzig, with Jim and Diane, to get those back into ordinance form and get them ready for your review. And then there's a second set, which I'll talk about in a moment, which is newer and are things that we worked on, our office worked on directly with Jennifer Veely and Mike Ruggier, your code enforcement officer, on signage. So first I was going to go through the set of the 2014 ordinances, and then we'll talk about signage. And I know there's a couple questions. And the reason Jen is here tonight is because most of these 2014 ordinances are housekeeping, I would characterize them. There's a couple, bless you. There's a couple that are a little bit more substantive, and there's one or two that the zoning board actually has been seeing a lot of applications for, so that's why Jen is here. So the first one, which actually is the main reason I think you're here, is there's a proposed ordinance to basically relax the standards, or give some flexibility for the standards on siting of, of air conditioning units and generators, those kind of accessory structures or units that need to be close to the house. And so there's a recognition that when you have a corner lot, which means you have 2 front yards, it makes it really tricky to site those kind of the structures or those mechanicals and when you can't put them in the front yard. So the proposed ordinance would basically allow, on a corner lot, you could put your AC unit or your generator, a similar type of structure, within the front yard. But it's limited at 20 square feet, so it keeps it pretty small. It's really just to provide some flexibility. And I know Jen has mentioned to me that this is a type of a variance that the zoning board has actually been seeing a fair amount of. So this would relieve those property owners of the need to get a variance. So kind of solve a problem that they've been seeing a lot of. There's an ordinance,
Excuse me,
yes.
Jen, would this have any relationship to the oil tanks that are on the property? Would they also fall under this?
Oil tanks could also fall, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Again, they're capped at 20 square feet, so we're talking about fairly small, not industrial strength, hopefully.
No.
A 20 square foot footprint, not 20
Footprint.
cubic feet.
Correct. So there's an ordinance on building height, which is really a purely cleanup type of an ordinance. I think at some point the definition of building height was changed around 2000-ish, but it looks like there's another section of the code where it was never brought up to.
You want some background on that one?
Yes.
The Sheridan. Our old ordinance required the building height from the curb.
Yes.
And if you look at the Sheridan, the curb is about 1 story higher than ground level where the apartment is. So the Sheridan is actually 7 stories. They sneaked one in on us when we didn't realize it. So this now is supposed to redefine that as the ground level,
Yeah.
where you measure from and not the curb level.
And it is redefined in the definitions, but there's a section of the code on building height that I think still has the old one, and so the change here would essentially just make reference to the definition, so they match.
The question I had was if the building is built on a slope and the front of the building is lower than the back of the building is 1 story less, how does that pertain to this ordinance?
I'd have to look at what the actual definition says. I believe it's from the.
Jen, do you know?
Street.
It's the mean natural level.
The mean between the two?
Mean between
A whole lot.
Okay, thank you.
We changed it when it was the curve, we went to the mean natural level.
Okay.
And that's the pre-development lot before any fill?
No. This is finished grade. So that's
Finished
a
grade.
change I've highlighted for the master plan. I would like to maybe think about making it pre-development, and what that would do is it wouldn't allow people to raise up
Raise
their
the
property, so
ground,
then you
yeah.
start
Raise the
from a higher
ground.
number. So,
Good point.
but if we make this change that's before you tonight, then if there's a future definition change to building height, it would be captured in both places. So
Right.
basically, this change just makes reference to that definition that you already have. Driveway width, the proposed ordinance would reduce the maximum from 36 feet to 24 feet. I don't know why you had a 36-foot maximum driveway width. I mean, for reference, when you're in a parking lot that has a two-way roadway in a like in a commercial parking lot,
24
it's
feet.
24 feet is standard.
Are
So
we talking residential or commercial?
it's general. It's sort of the cap. Both.
Yeah. Right
Because
now-
I see a number of houses that
They've enlarged.
they have the two-car garage, but then they want to park a car on the side. The kids go to college and,
Yep.
you know, and they need another car. So they widen the driveway.
Yeah.
And so
I would like to differentiate from residential and commercial at some point. I know that's another master plan issue that's kind of in my mind. But in the interim, I think we should be capping driveways at 24 feet is more than enough for really any kind of use, certainly commercial uses. And this would really cut back on impervious coverage within the township. I think it would make a difference. So any questions on that one? Next one is a, go ahead.
Vinny, what are you
sure you're
waving for?
speaking
You
to the
can't
mic.
hear her?
Yeah.
Speak into the mic.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman.
No, that's what I was
Oh,
going to
that's
ask you to
what,
speak.
I'm sorry, you're having trouble hearing?
No, yeah.
You got the senior citizens
Got
in
it?
the back that can't hear too well.
Thank you.
Shouldn't they move up?
So the next one is a pure housekeeping item. The R2M zone, which is only in a few locations in town. I think it's around sort of the Mazda Brook area, Smith Road area. This proposed change would eliminate the mixed-use land option from that zoning district. The district is pretty much built out, and that mixed-use option was never developed. So this is basically just removing that from the zoning district. I'm going to skip over the next one because I think it's a more substantive one. Critical slope regulations, right now they're in Chapter 225 and not the zoning code, and the proposed change here would just bring them into the zoning code, really where they belong, because in the case of a variance, you want to make sure that it's a C variance, so you have all your standards apply. And then the other change here was a point of clarity to make sure that the slope percentages that you have in your current regulations, that it's clear that those apply to each individual lot. So if you have a subdivision that comes in, they can't apply that to the whole subdivision. They have to look at every single lot and how the slope regulations are relative to that lot. So no real change to the actual regulations. It's a matter of where they are, sort of how they're administered, and then making clear that you need to look at every lot. Another cleanup item, there's sort of an old use that's allowed in some of your residential zones, nonprofit limited dividend house. We talked early on, like, what is that? But I think it's a sort of an outdated, I don't want to say boarding house, but a type of elderly house that really it's an outdated definition. So it would be basically remove that from those R3, R4, R5 zones. Another housekeeping item, you have an old district, which is actually not even on the official map anymore, the APRD2 district. This would just delete it from the zoning code. And then to go back to, I think the main item that might generate some questions is there is one proposed rezoning here on Parsippany Road. And this Jen knows the background, I'm sure. This has been floating around for, I think, at least since 2012. There was a request by the property owner at the corner of Green Hill Road and Parsippany Road. It's a wellness center type of a use, a former house, and you could tell just by looking at it, it used to be a house, and they requested to be rezoned from R3 residential to B3, which is one of your local neighborhood business zones. And so as part of the 2014 master plan, they looked at that there's a row of 4 lots, and all of them are or used to be single-family homes. And then there's the Chase, and then there's the IBEW building as you keep continuing to go up. So you've got that one little row, and then if you go south on Green Hill, it's the Green Hill Shopping Center. So other than that one row, it's fairly solidly business. And I think 2 out of those 4 lots now are a commercial use. One is that wellness center, and one I think is some sort of a medical office. Then there's, I believe, 2 homes that are remaining. So the proposal here, which dates again to at least 2012, 2013, would be to rezone those 4 lots to business. And I know that was a question raised by Councilman DePiero. What happens if you're one of the 2 who owns a house, a single-family house? Well, in that event, they would become non-conforming. They would be able to continue.
Well, not only that, but what happens to the property value of those 2 homes if they want to sell them, and they want to sell a residential home, but now it's a business district? Is that fair to those 2 residents?
I don't know. It might actually improve their property values if they're selling to somebody who wants to be a business.
I also thought that they requested it. Most of the residents
Yeah.
there when that happened, and again, that was 2011.
Could you verify that? If that's the case where they support it, I would say
They
fine.
came to us
Yeah.
back then.
The 2 residential.
All 4
All
houses?
4? Because I know it was the corner, but yeah, it was all 4.
Because they wanted
Okay.
businesses and we needed to expand.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's pretty much the only stretch of that whole corridor that's not business. So, yeah, but thank you. I knew it came from at least one property owner, but it sounds like all four. So that is the set of 2014 proposed changes. Any questions on that package? Then there's another set of ordinances before you that Jen and I were working on last summer, I think. And this arose from looking at the Beverwick Road corridor, which is an initiative that the mayor was interested in, cleaning up that, that sort of downtown corridor. It is one of the areas of Parsippany that could be considered, a center or a downtown type place. And so we were looking at signage in particular and lighting. And there had been a previous proposal a few years ago to think about relaxing the current prohibition on neon and similar type of lighting. You allow lit signs throughout the township, but you don't allow neon or similarly illuminated signs. That's the phrase. And there had been some discussion a few years ago. Well, do we want to think about relaxing that now that people have LED? And then there are different options for that. So we talked about it a lot, actually, with Jen and Mike Rougier and I, and we felt that we're not sure you want to go down that road. It's a slippery slope. One business has neon, and then the next one wants to one up, and then everybody all of a sudden has neon. It can be very distracting.
In my opinion, that would give it a honky-tonk atmosphere, and I don't think we want that.
Yeah.
Like
that was our feeling, is that's not something we think you probably want to encourage on Beverwick Road or really anywhere in Parsippany.
I said honky-tonk.
What's the definition?
I'm not sure.
But you know when you see it, right? So, but as part of that, looking at your signage regulations, and I will say your signage regulations are a little crazy. They're very lengthy. But we were looking at ways to trim them up a little bit, to clarify some things, tighten up where we thought that it made sense, and we think you want to tighten up, give a little bit of flexibility where we thought it made sense also. So some things that we proposed. First of all, a tweak to the definition of sign to make clear that if someone paints a wall of the building or a window of the building, that constitutes a sign. That came from your code enforcement officer. He was starting to see a few businesses doing that, and it really is a sign for all intents and purposes, and not something that you want to see kind of crop up unregulated. A lot of clarification on the window signage. Because right now you have some conflicting language. There's a prohibition of going over 20% coverage on your windows, but it's unclear whether that's a temporary or permanent sign. It says both, basically. So we worked on tightening that up so that it actually is just a temporary sign. So you can't have a permanent sign in your window. And if you have a temporary sign, which you see often in businesses, if you have a temporary sign, it can't cover more than 20%. Because otherwise you might have businesses that cover the entire window frontage, which is just really not attractive. It's not actually inducive for people to want to go shop in those businesses if you can't see what's going on inside. We tightened up what constitutes one window, so that every sort of glass pane, everything counts as a window. So you can't cover a whole row and that counts as one window. It's a little bit wonky. We did give some flexibility for open signs. We wanted people to be able to do that, businesses on a permanent basis, that they can put those in their window. It makes sense, right? You should be able to know when the business is open. And likewise, hours of operation, those tend to be pretty small, and we've capped the size on those. And then the third sort of way out is lottery signs. That's really important for businesses that sell lottery tickets, that it's clear that they're a store that sells lotto tickets. So those three types of signs can go permanently in a window capped at a certain size. Let's see what else. Oh, then a late addition, and this came from an experience. One of your shopping centers, I think it was the Target one that has upgraded, and I think they're almost done. There was some pretty disruptive construction for a period of time, and those stores were, they were hurting, and they felt that they were not visible. They felt it was hard for people to know that they were open. And you do allow temporary signage along the roadside, but it's capped by time. I think it's 4 weeks out of a year. And so they reached their 4-week cap, and then they were non-compliant, but the construction was still going on. So we've written up sort of a way for that kind of signage to exist when there's construction going on or a temporary disruption basically to a business, that you can have that temporary signage for as long as the construction or obstruction lasts. I think that's a good business-friendly type of regulation. So I think that's it for signage. you know, it would be easy to dive into your sign ordinance and spend 3 years. In my town, we took 4. We did not want to do that. We wanted to take a, you know, sort of a fine-tooth approach, fix what we knew needed to be fixed right away. I think that there's some master plan things that we'd like to look at, but in terms of immediate fixes, we thought things made sense. We try to fix those, you know, low-hanging fruit. So any questions on ordinance changes?
No, that satisfied
No.
me, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Lau, what's the next step? Refer to the planning board, or?
So the ordinances will be introduced at the next
Next
public
meeting.
meeting, and then
Okay.
it'll be referred to planning board.
Okay, good, excellent.
Are there any questions
Thank
for
you.
Jen while she's here as well? Okay, and Jen, I'm just going to ask you to remain back for one issue on the consent agenda. That's all I have, Council President.
Thank you. Township Clerk, Madden.
No report at this time, Council President. Thank you.
Township offices, committees, reports.
Not at this time.
Okay. Engineering report, Lake Parsippany Road Improvements Phase 6 project. Construction of the 6th phase of the Lake Parsippany Road Improvement Project continues. The contractor will start construction again the first week of April and should substantially be complete by the first week in May. No council action required. Moraine Area Streets Phase 2 project, the second phase of this project is substantially complete. The contractor will start working again the second week in April on all work will be completed by the end of the month. No action required by council. Mount Tabor Area Streets Phase 3 improvement project. Construction is approximately 40% complete. Construction will start again the second week in April and continue into June. No council action required. Drainage issues, engineering of the Public Works Department are still investigating numerous drainage issues due to the continuous wet weather and the very high groundwater levels. The Cherry Lane issues are still being evaluated, but the wet weather has delayed some of our ability to get equipment on site to investigate more thoroughly. We are also investigating numerous concerns throughout town, including Mount Tabor, Hills of Troy, and Lake Parsippany. No council action required. Edgewood Court reconstruction project. This project is ready to start construction and preliminary work will begin by the second week in April. No council action required. Sandra Drive and Sandra Court reconstruction project. A pre-construction meeting is being scheduled for the week of April 8th. Construction work is anticipated to begin by the end of April. No council action required. 2019 road resurfacing curb and sidewalk program. This is an annual road resurfacing project which includes minor drainage improvements, curb repairs, and handicap ramp upgrades throughout town. Bids were opened on March 20th, and we recommend award of the project to 4 Cleanup Incorporated. A resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council. Old Bloomfield Ave Phase 2 reconstruction project. This project is for the second phase of the reconstruction of Old Bloomfield Avenue from Ada Court to the Montville border, and includes drainage improvements, curbing, and full-depth pavement reconstruction. Bids were opened on March 21st, and we recommend award this project to Midwest Construction. A resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council. Parsippany Hanover Realty 2, LLC, Major Soil Moving Permit, Block 202, Lot 6.04. The Board of Adjustment has recommended approval of a major soil moving permit associated with the site plan application on Dryden Way at Route 10. This office has reviewed the application and recommends the Township Council approve the permit. The resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council. MCC Owner LLC, Major Soil Moving Permit, Block 136, Lot 43.05. The Planning Board has recommended approval of a major soil moving permit associated with the site plan application located at 400 Interpace Parkway. This office has reviewed the application and recommends the Township Council approve the permit. A resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council. ISCON of New Jersey Incorporated, Major Soil Moving Permit, Block 726, Lot 12.01. The Board of Adjustment has recommended approval of a major soil moving permit associated with the site plan application located at 176 Troy Road. This office has reviewed the application and recommends the Township Council approve the permit. A resolution will need to be adopted by the Township Council. Bids taken March 20th. 2019 road resurfacing curb and sidewalk program. March 21st, improvement to Old Bloomfield Ave, Phase 2. March 22nd, resurface tennis courts for the Parsippany Parks Department. To be taken April 4th, supplying various materials for the municipal utilities and public works. Quotations, proposals, qualifications. April 11th, fireworks display services. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
The floor is open.
Okay, if you do come up, please state your name and address. Sign in, you'll be given 5 minutes.
James Griffey, Parsippany. I'll open up with two things. One is, when did you know about it? What did you do once you found out about it? Let me say that again. When did you know about it? What did you do once you found out about it? I'm assuming that down the road in the future, some of you may be asked that question in different proceedings. And let me tell you what happened. So I've been following the Parsippany police officer case that just settled on a forced retirement for improperly submitting paperwork, allegedly, for time that he didn't work and he got paid for. And I was obviously very curious about the settlement agreement that took place. So with that being said, I put in an open public records request regarding some of the details of that officer. And I also included some of the information about myself regarding Hearing Officer Devine. And for Emily and Janice, let me just indulge me. I'm sure you already know this, but a hearing officer is somebody that the town appoints to hear police matters or other township matters where there are administrative charges brought against the employee. And you guys had passed a resolution to hire Mr. Devine to hear police matters. And he happened to be the hearing officer that heard my matter as well. Not only did he rule in my favor in 2015, he also said that you didn't have jurisdiction to even come after me. But with that being said, the man has not been paid. And he writes a letter right here in my hands that I got through the Open Public Records Act. And he says this: there was no formal response to the invoice from the Barbario administration, and it has not been paid. However, I was advised informally that as Mayor Barbario did not like my decision in this matter, that I was not going to be paid. Let me read that again. However, I was advised informally that as Mayor Barbario did not like my decision in this matter, I was not going to be paid. Now, this is not my guy. This is the gentleman that you hired to hear an independent hearing officer. And you didn't, not only does Emily and Janice, usually what happens is the town, if the hearing officer rules against you, the town usually doesn't appoint him again, which was the case here. You never appointed him again to hear any other matters. But this administration, or maybe part of some of them, because some of them are still here, took it one step further. And they told him, we're not even going to pay you. We're going to get to the bottom of who informally told him. So I just had a couple questions, and I don't know if any of you are going to answer, but these are them. As I told you before, when did you know about it, and what'd you do once you found out about it? Who directed Ann Cucci not to pay Mr. Devine? Number one. Number two, is it true that the Soriano administration just recently paid Mr. Devine after the date of my Open Public Records Act? My Open Public Records Act was March 8th of 2019. Mr. Devine wrote this letter in October of 2018. If, and I say if because I don't know, if he was paid after my OPA request was submitted, why did it take the Soriano administration 5 months to pay this man? This man has not been paid in over 3 years. Were any council members involved in this not authorizing this payment? Remember, Mr. DePiero, I asked you in December 2015. Mr. Valori and Mr. Paluzzo voted to accept the hearing officer's recommendations. You did not. Is there or will there be any investigation to identify who, quote, in the letter, informally told Mr. Devine that he was not getting paid because of his decision? If not, why not? Is there going to be an investigation? What steps will be put into place so that in the future, other township employees can expect to get a fair hearing? This officer right here, I don't know him. I guess he's pretty new, but what is he going to do? How is he expect to get a fair hearing should something ever happen when you got your hearing officer telling you, if you don't make the right decision for the township, you're not going to get paid? Look, during each one of your campaigns, it's election year, during every one of your campaigns, I've researched every one of you. You said you ran on transparency, open government. You
30
have
seconds.
the power to have Mr. Lott, Mr. Soriano, or Ms. Cucci answer these questions. Will you step up and do the right thing? And then my last question is, how many other hearing officers have not been paid in over 3 years? I get you. I'll answer that one. I get you. This is the only one. Guarantee the only one that's never been paid. So I look forward to anybody's answer. I'll end with this. Again, when did you know about it? What did you do once you found out about it? I told you about it, so if you're asked again, you can't say you didn't know anything about it. Thank you.
Council President, it'd be my recommendation to council that the statements and questions that were just posed by Mr. Karifi not be answered because they're currently the subject of active litigation with the township, as well as they also relate to several personnel matters.
Nicholas Homiak, Lake Hiawatha. That sounds like a wise guy, but it sounds like something that Donald Trump would do. I'm not going to pay you. The Knoll Golf Course. I happened to notice about a month ago they were filling in the pond with basalt stone. Now, it's supposed to be a public utility, but the public really has no say. In the winter, you could walk the landscape, and when the golfers come, it belongs to strictly golfers. But I want to know why that pond, that riparian zone of that pond, couldn't have been restored with native plant species. And most of that probably could have been donated, including the labor. But because the public isn't allowed to participate in their own so-called utility, it's like a possibility. Let's call it a beautification project for the town of Parsippany. We could have flowers, grasses, maybe some rhododendron instead of that Japanese knotweed that grows down there. Because it's not only a golf course, it's also a species of green acres in a river-sensitive area. So I would ask that Knoll opens up more of their aspects and their management to possible public input and participation. I have here a picture, and I think I brought it to the council back in October 2016. This is the oldest tree in Parsippany, and there's a meeting in the Lake Hiawatha Elementary School on April the 24th about the JCP&L. It's probably another unnecessary easement that they want to put in there. It's directly will affect this tree. This, in Tree City, this is the mayor. This is Mayor Tree right here. And I'm not sure, but this tree may be about 400 years old. So I would hope that the word gets around that hopefully as many people as possible will attend this meeting for this tree alone to try to protect this resource of the forgotten forest of Parsippany. Just in case I can't make it at the next meeting for the budget, there's two words. One is compendious, which is the definition of presenting the essential facts of something in a comprehensive but concise way, as for example, a compendious study. The other word is contemporaneous, which is existing at the same time period or the background that we all operate or affected by everything. Now, this budget, to keep everything the way it is, including the 13 jobs, which can be further scrutinized, will cost the average Parsippany taxpayer on a municipal level, that's all we're dealing with here, the facts, $4 and I believe 38 cents. And to to be told that you can't see it this way, that's just politics. $4.38. And all the people complaining about the taxes, the British are coming, the British are coming. Well, we didn't pay the British any taxes either, if you read your history. But the bottom line is that if you can be retired, make up to a little over $80,000 a year, and put it in, you get a tax freeze from the time you're 65. You don't have to pay those tax increases. And if you're a veteran
30 seconds.
or a senior, you get another $250. So let's do what we have to do to keep Parsippany viable and healthy and keep these people employed. If we have problems with their work habits, address that. Don't get rid of the jobs, because that's not what it's all about. Why do we always have to say, we have to cut, we have to cut? No, we don't. We have to maintain. We have to maintain ourselves. So just in case I don't make the next meeting. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cucci, in regard to the additional $250 that a senior can receive if they're a veteran, is there a cap on the income that they have to make?
Yes, I believe there is.
And do you know what the cap is?
Do you know how much it is? I'm not sure how much it is.
Well, we called the tax department, and that cap is $10,000.
All right, yep.
Okay?
There's
Thank you.
also the freeze, which is different.
Yeah, the freeze
Okay.
is completely
Okay.
different. I understand that. Yes, that's what Mr. Homiak was referring to the 80,000. Yes. Thank you.
All right, see no one else come forward, entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani.
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy.
Yes.
Ms. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Floor is closed.
Okay, status of adopted ordinances. Ordinance 2019:03, adopted March 19th, mayoral action March 22nd, effective date April 20th. Ordinance 2019:04, adopted March 19th, mayoral action March 22nd, effective date April 12th. Ordinance 2019:06, adopted March 19th, mayoral action March 22nd, effective date April 12th. Ask the council members to take a look at the introduction stuff. If there's any questions, concerns,
Just one comment, if I may,
go ahead.
Council President. We're going to be voting at our next meeting, the final vote on the budget, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And we had discussed restoring two positions. One would be the police officer to satisfy civil service, and the other one was to restore a tree climber for Parks and Forestry, because I doubt that he could find seasonal help that would include a tree climber. So we would restore that one too. We need, I guess right after we approve the budget, we would approve that amendment.
Through you, Council President.
Yes.
As far as the tree climber, they weren't going to hire a new tree climber. They were going to move someone up into that position and fill in the positions at the bottom for those three positions that were there. Now, these are laborer positions also that are key and essential in maintaining our parks, and that is one of the things that they cite every time they talk about Parsippany being the #1 town, or best town in the county, best town in the state. They talk about our parks, and our park superintendent does a very good job of keeping the labor very tight. And when positions opened up last year, instead of filling them in the winter, he wanted to save the township money because there was not as much work, and he figured he can get by the winter. But now we're going to handicap him in the spring by removing these three positions from there, and you just want to add the tree climber. Let me ask you a question. Should the tree climber climb the tree alone? Should he have someone down on the bottom manning the equipment? making sure the area is safe. These people work in crews. You can't just hire one guy. One guy's a tree climber. You have someone else who's down on the ground. Jim Walsh, who you constantly applaud when he comes up here, has run a very tight department. And quite frankly, it is insulting to remove these 3 positions from someone that you applaud so much when he says, this is something I need to keep our parks and our trees going. We're about to do a Tree City proclamation, a Tree City award again at the end of this month. Mr. Walsh, you should ask him yourself, is very, very concerned about our status as a Tree City without these 3 employees. So just adding 1 is not enough. Thank you.
Mr. President, before we go on, introduction number 14, please.
Okay.
I have some questions on the fees, and I believe Mr. Joe Plesher is here, if you would.
Through you, Council President, if I may.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, to Councilwoman Gragnani's question, we did circulate earlier this evening prior to the council meeting. Ms. Cucci circulated the current fees for each of the respective programs. The new fee, also she wrote in what the current fees are. And as the councilwoman did indicate, we do have our recreation superintendent, Joe Plesher, with us this evening. So if there are any further questions, Joe would be glad to answer them for the council.
Joe? These fees are going to be incorporated to every park that we have, whether it be a turf field or a grass field.
So you're looking at the rental rates?
Yes.
Yep, all the fields, we follow the same rates for all the fields, except the only difference is whether it's a turf field, meaning an artificial turf field, or a natural grass field. There's a difference, but otherwise, every field, every piece of grass in this town, we apply the fees to.
And I'm only bringing it up because when we received the initial communique on this, the fees went from $10 to $600.
You can kick me in the butt for that one.
Okay, I will.
It's a range. So basically, right now I have 3 pages worth of programs. Probably.
Yes, I think we have it.
Yeah. So it's a range. So some programs will be $10. Some programs were, I believe it was up to $600. I have my notes here. $600. I wanted to bump it to $750 as the max. That's really where I'm looking. We want to add back ice hockey.
And would that be the $750?
That would probably be
max
the
that
most
you're
expensive
looking at?
sport we would ever add. Would be ice hockey back, because it's
And
the
that
cost
would
of
be,
what it is.
that would be for ice time at the Menon Arena.
Yeah, well, the way it works is you join a league, they charge you in the league we're actually looking at right now, the teams are about $4,000. They give you 12 games, 4 hours of practice time, pays the refs. You can buy extra sheets of ice, they call it. But that was basically, we want to expand things, and if we're going to offer some of these more expensive sports, I needed to have a higher upper limit. So probably the word range in there would have solved a lot of the questions.
Okay.
But nothing's going from $10 to $650 or $700.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
They're very little. I made some of the jumps already. Travel baseball, travel softball went from $5 to $7. It was just basically to cover expenses.
So, and I see by the information that Ms. Cucci gave us that the fees are very nominal. They're
Oh yeah,
not,
we have the cheapest fees anyplace. I mean, you call Montville and ask them for a turf field for 2 hours, and you'll fall on the floor when you
And that's
look at how cheap we're charging.
Okay, and that's what these fees are based on, the time that.
By the hour, we charge usually 2-hour minimums for turf fields, for artificial turf fields, because it works out nice with soccer games.
Okay.
They're an hour and a half, they're off, the next team's warming up. Baseball games, we try to stick, if they're little kids, 2.5-hour blocks. We try to adjust the blocks for the type of sport that we have.
Okay.
And then if it's practices, we let them shorten them, but everybody pays whatever the actual time is that they're out on the field.
Okay, and that would be for any type of team that's going to come here, even our own boys and girls
No,
that would be
our own
playing?
teams, there's, our little leagues, our local soccer clubs are all exempted.
Okay.
You vote on that at the first meeting of every year. You voted on a list of exempted organizations. It included the fire departments, EMSs,
Right.
all the little leagues, both football teams, both cheerleaders. You exempted all of them. I will note, though, the biggest group in town is the soccer club. They do have a lot of out-of-town players. there's a clause in our ordinance that says, as long as they don't go over a certain percentage,
Yes.
regardless of the number of players, they pay us $100 per out-of-town player per season. So last year, don't quote me on this perfectly, it was either $21,000 or $23,000 they had sent me a check for, because they had either 210 or 200.
We're talking now
200.
about travel teams.
No, there were some, they put some kids on rec teams too
Rec
now,
teams
out-of-town
too?
rec teams. But they're
It
very, they
used to
send me
be-
a full roster every
It
year.
used to be an issue with travel teams.
Well, most of it's travel teams, but the point is they're paying their fair due now. Instead of getting a free field, they're coming across with a $20,000
Well,
check.
the other issue a few years ago was that the travel teams, these coaches for the travel teams, hold their win-loss record take it very seriously. And some of them were recruiting more kids from out of town with talent, and some of the kids from Parsippany couldn't make the travel teams. And we had set that at 80% at some point.
That's still there. They send me a list every year, and they list everybody's
So on the
addresses.
travel teams, every travel team has to have 80% of the kids, local kids.
No, actually, the way the ordinance is written, it's by the total program. So if they have, let's go with easy numbers, if they had 2,000 kids in their program, 400 of them could be out of town. Doesn't mean it's 80% of each team. It just means total. It's
Yeah, that got
20%.
around, that's not when I agreed to that, that's not what I intended.
Yeah, well,
I don't, you know,
Mr. Locke can reread the
I'll-
ordinance, and we can talk
yeah.
about changing it if we need to.
Yeah, my concern was
I-
some of our own kids in Parsippany were not being developed because the coaches were looking to pull better talent from out of town onto some of these teams to improve their win-loss record.
Yeah.
And some of our own kids were not getting an opportunity to join a travel team. And that was my objection years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
apparently,
believe Mr. Locke can check it, but
apparently it's
the
still
way,
an issue.
the way it ended up going was by the total enrollment in the program, not by the total enrollment in each team.
Yeah, that's,
Michael, what do you recommend we do?
I think it should be revisited because, I mean, my goal is to get, to develop our own kids, you know? And I don't care if some of these coaches that are so proud of their win-loss record that they're gonna recruit from out of town and deprive our kids from joining the team. I could care less. I want our kids to play, to participate and develop.
Mr.
So,
Bishop.
so maybe it should be per team, maybe it's not 80%, maybe 70% or 60%, but some requirement that every team have some of our kids on it.
Yeah, I just found it. It's by the organization, not by the team.
And in your experience, are the kids who have objectively greater talent concentrated on single teams and everybody else is on
In any
different teams?
sport, the higher elite players end up on the travel teams. It's just the way it is. My son played baseball, and he's 28 now, but, you know,
Okay.
travel kids they want to play with their own talent level. It's just the way it is. But I understand your position. I mean, I was on the committee back then when I represented the Little League at the time, and we had that big conversation.
I think it actually happens
Is
in
there,
every town.
Joe, you've been on both sides. Is there a compromise where we can help more of our kids get on some of these teams?
I don't think it'll make a difference, honestly, because kids they'll go other places.
It happens in every town.
You're gonna
There's
the kids,
all
the elite
towns.
kids the elite kids or the parents who think they have elite kids, I should say, too. They're gonna want their kids to be on these elite teams. We came up with the number $100. They write the check every year. They don't balk about it. They get to have their trophy teams as far as they're the ones winning the states.
So you think it's fair the way
I
it
don't.
is?
It's also going to be almost impossible to enforce without having somebody who just sits there and looks at every roster of every. In this case, I'm not picking on soccer, but soccer's the sport.
Then
You'd
you
have to look at every roster of every team every
And
season.
you recommend it not change?
You can talk about it. I mean, we can talk about it at the Rec Advisory Committee with Ms. Gregiani, but I don't think it'll make. We went through this, if you remember, for months on end trying to come up with the wording to make it work.
Okay. So
I
now we're
believe it was
Manchester
under-
United. Now we're Manchester United. We're the Yankees of soccer now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We went through this, I believe it was under Michael
Okay.
Luther's administration. We went over it and over it.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
No problem.
Thank you for answering my question.
Through you, Council President, on the proposed ordinance for introduction at the next meeting, we could modify where it says fee right above where it says "see attached" in Ann's handwriting, we could put a fee range if that satisfies the council, just so it's
Sure.
clear
That's-
if
that's
members of the members of the public are viewing this ordinance prospectively.
Any questions?
Okay, so
Thank
we
you.
Thank
we
you.
can have Colette change that.
Okay. All right, Mr. DePiero, Resolution 2019-086.
Can I just interject one other thing, Council President? Item 15, which is modifications to the fire prevention ordinance. This is something that was being worked on prior to my arrival here in Parsippany. It was reviewed by both Mr. Lott's office, and I also believe that Mr. Bucco is the attorney of record for the Fire Prevention Bureau. It was also reviewed by his office. This ordinance, as it was sent to you today, is the most current revision. There may be one additional revision. We had a meeting with fire prevention and the new staff down at the PAL. We may modify some of the inspection needs at the PAL because it is a quasi-public building. So when you receive your agenda for the meeting 2 weeks from now, there may be one additional change to that ordinance before you're asked to vote on it. So,
Thank you.
and Jen, anything else on that?
No, exactly. We've worked hard for the last year trying to make those changes and.
Jen, you jump into mic. Thank you.
We've been working on the ordinance. It's probably 15 years that we haven't changed the fire prevention ordinance. It's still written in the days when the Fire Prevention Bureau ran the department and not the township, so it's probably 15 to 20 years old. We're making a lot of it match the state regulations, and our fire prevention inspectors are some of the best in the county. So we're working hard to make those ordinances match the state and also to make the residents and the businesses safe. So as each time we have a little meeting, we realize, let's change this slightly. So before it's changed, we'd like to, before it's approved, change a few slight things. So.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, Mr. DePiero.
Okay. Resolution 2019-086. Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany, Troy Hills, authorizing the grant application for the State of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Green Acres Program. Make a motion to open to the public
You're gonna say-
this item only, this resolution only.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
The floor is open for this resolution only.
I'd appreciate some kind of a rundown. It just sounds kind of general. I didn't pick up the paper. I apologize, but could somebody explain exactly what this is?
There's a grant that's being given for Green Acres by the Department of Environmental Protection, and the precondition of them giving us a grant, I don't remember the amount of the grant, but I can get that for you later, Nick. The precondition is the fact that we have to introduce this resolution and adopt it and have a hearing, so that's what this is for.
Open space purchase?
Green Acres, yes. You're welcome.
Okay, see no one else come forward, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is closed.
Motion to approve the above resolution.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson? Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Through you, Council
you.
President, just to answer Mr. Homak's question, this is the Green Acres application that's being applied for the Smithfield Improvement Project. Parsippany is looking to obtain funding in the amount of $875,000 in the form of a matching grant. There'll be no loan associated with it. And we have funding in place of about $3.5 million for the project in total.
Mr. Kazmark, is
Yes.
that in regard to the new cricket field?
This is the overall Smithfield. There's multiple elements to it. So without going through the whole application here, because we're also looking to do Field D, which is the one with the 2% pitch where we have the drainage issues.
That's-
So we have that, we
that's-
have and we have the cricket piece as well.
That's to replace the turf.
Correct. So there's multiple facets to the overall improvements down there.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Okay, any questions on the consent agenda? There's no questions. Mrs. McCarthy?
Approval of payroll and bills list. CFO Ann Cucci recommends authorization for payment. Authorization payment of the April 3rd, 2019 regular miscellaneous payroll estimated at $1,600,000. Payment of the bills vouchers list of March 18th, 2019 through March 28th, 2019 totaling $2,709,017.